What happens when one of Hollywood's most celebrated actresses finds herself face-to-face with her most relentless critic on live television? The moment the interview began, the tension in the studio was unmistakable, so thick it vibrated beneath every word. What was supposed to be a light, charming promotional appearance instantly shifted into something far more volatile, ultimately leading to one of the most shocking walkouts ever seen on daytime TV. Sarah Jessica Parker entered the studio, looking absolutely radiant in a flowing emerald gown, her signature curls cascading elegantly as she settled across from Andy Cohen. The opening moments were cordial, almost nostalgic. Andy greeted her with warmth. She returned it with poise, and for a fleeting moment it felt like every other celebrity appearance. Polished, controlled, predictable. But everything shifted the moment Andy ignored her film project and instead dove straight into the recent online discourse surrounding her past work. Sarah's smile didn't fully disappear, but it cracked, just for a heartbeat. Andy pushed immediately, quoting unnamed critics who had called her acting overly theatrical and one-dimensional. The energy in the room shifted. Sarah adjusted her posture, every movement sharper, more deliberate. She asked coolly whether this was supposed to be about her new work or an attempt to relitigate her past. But Andy wasn't backing down. He pressed further, boldly suggesting that for 6 seasons she hadn't acted at all, that she had simply played herself in designer clothing as Carrie Bradshaw. That was the moment everything changed. Sarah's response was controlled at first, but her voice carried fire. She dismissed the accusation as reductive nonsense, reminding Andy that millions weren't obsessed with that character by accident, that authenticity was not a weakness, but the highest form of acting. Andy smirked and leaned back like a man who had just landed the punch he was waiting for. He escalated yet again, invoking anonymous industry insiders who claimed she never had the range to separate herself from the character that made her famous. The audience stirred, visibly uncomfortable. For the first time, Sarah's composure visibly cracked. She shot back that the so-called insiders were nothing more than bitter gossipers who never achieved a fraction of what she had. She made it abundantly clear she was not here to be ambushed under the guise of journalism. Andy, clearly satisfied with having pushed her to the edge, accused her reaction of being predictable, calling it classic Carrie Bradshaw behavior, drama, deflection, making it about everyone else. The room froze. Sarah leaned forward, eyes burning, and called the entire exchange exactly what it was. Not journalism, but tabloid theater masquerading as intellect. Andy's eyebrows lifted in exaggerated innocence, pretending to be shocked as Sarah challenged him. He insisted he wasn't attacking her. He was holding her accountable. That word hit the air like a spark. Sarah leaned forward, voice rising as she demanded accountability for what exactly? For creating one of the most iconic characters in television history? For building a career spanning decades? For inspiring millions of women who saw themselves in Carrie Bradshaw? Andy smirked, emboldened by her fire. Or, he suggested, for convincing people that shallow materialism and narcissism were empowerment. Because, let's be honest, Carrie Bradshaw wasn't exactly a role model. The comment hit Sarah like a slap. Her complexion went white, then flushed deep crimson as she sat forward, fury trembling in her voice. How dare he reduce a character that meant everything to millions of women into a punchline? Carrie Bradshaw explored love, friendship, heartbreak, career failure, and growth in ways television never had before. But Andy cut her off. From his perspective, and from countless viewers, Carrie was a self-absorbed woman who used her friends like accessories and repeatedly made terrible choices, yet was rewarded for them. That wasn't growth, he said smugly. It was arrested development in designer heels. The studio fell terrifyingly silent. Even the crew stopped moving, aware they were witnessing a moment no one could walk back from. Sarah stared at Andy for a long moment, her breath sharp and controlled. When she finally spoke, her voice dropped to a chilling calm. She reminded him she'd sat on this very set before, always respecting the show, the host, the format. But this was not hosting. This was bullying, and she would not sit quietly while he tore down something that brought joy to millions just to manufacture a viral moment. Andy leaned in, eyes gleaming like a predator who smelled blood. Viral moment? No, this was honest conversation. And if she couldn't handle honest conversation about her own work, perhaps that said more about her than him. Sarah gave a low, bitter laugh. Honest conversation, she said, would involve acknowledging the show's groundbreaking impact, the way it changed television for women forever, the careers it launched, the global cultural shift it ignited. Instead, Andy was cherry-picking the most reductive criticisms he could find and parading them as universal truths. But those criticisms exist for a reason, Andy pushed back. When multiple critics, even members of her own cast, have hinted at issues with the character and the show's messaging, shouldn't that be worth reflecting on? Sarah's eyes narrowed like blades. Her co-stars? Was he really dragging her personal relationships into this circus just to bait her into throwing someone under the bus? Because if that was the plan, it would not work. Andy insisted he wasn't trying to instigate conflict, merely acknowledging that not everyone was happy with certain storylines or the way certain characters were prioritized. Sarah snapped back, demanding to know who these sources were, because as far as she remembered, they were all professional enough to handle disagreements in private, not through gossip and talk show theatrics. The tension became suffocating. Everyone in the room could feel the line Andy was crossing, but he didn't stop. He suggested gently but firmly that maybe it was time she acknowledged the show wasn't perfect, that some choices weren't great, and that some criticism was, in fact, valid. Sarah suddenly rose from her chair. The sharp scrape of metal against flooring echoed like a gunshot. Gasps came from everywhere. Even the cameraman flinched. She looked down at Andy with blazing eyes and said coldly, "You want to talk about imperfection? This interview tops that list. You want to talk about bad choices? Start with the producer who turned what should have been a professional appearance into a personal attack session." Andy's tone shifted fast, a thin attempt at concern. "Sarah, please sit down." Andy insisted they were just talking, but Sarah didn't hesitate to cut him down. They were not talking, he was performing. She accused him of trying to manufacture a viral moment at her expense, weaponizing her work, her character, her legacy as a punching bag. Andy raised a brow, amused, asking if calling it her legacy wasn't a bit presumptuous. After all, this was a TV show, not Shakespeare. The insult hit like a slap. Sarah stared at him in stunned disbelief, struggling to process that dismissal. Presumptuous? To take pride in a series that employed hundreds, launched careers, reshaped culture, and gave women permission to speak openly about sex, ambition, and identity in ways television had never dared before? Andy doubled down without hesitation, questioning whether the show truly empowered women, or simply repackaged old stereotypes in prettier clothes. At the end of the day, wasn't Carrie Bradshaw just another woman whose entire world revolved around chasing a man? Sarah's composure wavered as her hands clenched into fists. That, she said, was an insult. A reductive, deeply misogynistic reading of a deeply layered character. To flatten 6 seasons of storytelling about friendship and growth into nothing but a desperate search for male validation said everything about his perspective. Andy's tone hardened. Some misogyny. Convenient. So anyone who criticizes her work is automatically a misogynist? That's not defensive, that's avoidance. That's intellectually dishonest. Sarah's temper broke. What's intellectually dishonest, she snapped, is inviting someone under the pretense of promoting their work, only to spend the entire interview tearing down their achievements. What's dishonest is claiming to support women in entertainment, while actively undermining one in real time. Andy insisted he wasn't undermining her. He was asking legitimate questions about cultural impact and artistic merit. If she couldn't tell the difference between criticism and personal attack, maybe she was the problem. Sarah laughed sharply. Cultural impact? Artistic merit? He had spent the last 15 minutes calling her most celebrated work shallow materialism, hinting her co-stars resented her, twisting legacy into scandal. That wasn't critique. That was character assassination. The silence in the studio was absolute. No one dared breathe. Cameras kept rolling, even as the crew silently exchanged looks, unsure whether to intervene or let the moment burn. Andy tried, weakly, to pivot. Things got heated. Fine. Why not sit back down, talk about the new project she was here to promote? Sarah stared at him with a fury that could cut glass. No, he wanted to talk about her work. After spending 20 straight minutes dismantling her credibility, he thought he could just switch back to promo mode like nothing happened. Andy's confidence faltered, desperation slipping into his voice as he reminded her this was live television. These things happen. They were professionals. Professionals. Sarah's voice lifted into disbelief. He called this professional? After everything, after every time she had supported him, backed him, showed him respect, this was the response? Sarah's composure finally snapped. I've been a loyal guest. I've recommended people to your show. And this is how you repay that loyalty? By ambushing me with vicious personal attacks? Her voice cut through the studio like a blade. Andy tried to defend himself, insisting they were simply industry perspectives, but even he sounded unsure. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Industry perspectives? You mean gossip and speculation dressed up as discourse? The tension was suffocating. I've been in this business for decades, she continued, voice rising. I know the difference between constructive criticism and malicious gossip masquerading as journalism. Andy, visibly shaken but clinging to pride, muttered that she was overreacting to standard interview questions. That was it. She took a step toward his desk. Standard interview questions don't call someone's life work shallow materialism. They don't imply their colleagues secretly despise them. They don't reduce a groundbreaking series to misogynistic stereotypes. Andy attempted one last plea. Sarah, let's just take a breath. But she cut him off. I'm done being gracious. I'm done pretending this wasn't a calculated attempt to humiliate me for entertainment. She turned to the camera, her voice calm but burning. I came here to talk about my craft, my passion. Instead, I've been subjected to character assassination. This is not journalism. This is cruelty. Andy tried again, desperate now. We can work this out. She turned back, icy. There's nothing to work out. You disrespected me as an artist and as a person. You used your platform to diminish my legacy. With that, she walked toward the edge of the stage. The room was silent. Andy called after her, voice cracking. Where are you going? Sarah paused at the exit, delivering a final blow. Somewhere people understand the difference between honest conversation and calculated cruelty. Somewhere my work is respected. Somewhere I don't have to defend my life's work to someone who never understood it. And with that, Sarah Jessica Parker walked off live television, leaving Andy Cohen alone, the audience frozen, millions at home witnessing talk show history unfold in real time. The camera lingered on Andy's stunned face before cutting to commercial. In under 30 minutes, a routine interview had become a career-defining explosion on live TV.